Hello, everyone. Welcome, Virginia exporters. Thank you so much for joining us this beautiful Thursday morning on our webinar all about e-commerce to help you grow your export sales, brand, and business. So as people are finishing logging on, I will just like to start by introducing the wonderful ladies who will be joining us today on this webinar. So on the VEDP side, we have Stephanie Agee, Vice President of International Trade. We are so thankful to have you on today. Thank you so much for joining. She will be talking a little bit more about VEDP and what they're doing to help exporters like you guys succeed in these pretty challenging times. And then we have Monica Sadie, Step Director, also at the VEDP, and she is the lady to talk to because she is the lady with the money, with the STEP funds. So if you have any questions about STEP funding or anything like that, she's the person to talk to, and we're very thankful to have her on here as well. So on our side, we have our Chief Technical Officer, Susanna Hardy. She is the all-knowing person about specific content for specific markets, and she knows a bunch of information about things like e-commerce, international online marketing, SEO. So we're very thankful to have her on today. And my name is Samantha Sofici. I'm a senior business development manager at IBT Online. And my goal is to help exporters like you guys succeed in your international markets and just kind of figuring out what's the best way to do that via your online presence. So just a quick word about IBT Online. So we've been in business since 2002, and our main goal is to help exporters grow in their international markets through their online presence. So for us, it's through website localization and international online marketing. We have states with over 20, we have programs with over 20 US states. We have created websites and done international marketing in over 40 countries and in over 20 languages. So it's a well-trodden road, and we have a great team behind us doing all of the work. We've actually been recognized just this past month as we received the President's E Award, which is something that we're really proud of. It's the highest recognition any US company can receive for making a significant contribution to the expansion of US exports. So by helping companies like you succeed in your international markets. So in today's webinar, we have a lot that we want to cover. My dog has something to say about it. So first, a helping hand for Virginian businesses, and we'll hear from Stephanie Agee about the VEDP. Then we'll go into the international buyer persona and their localized journey, which is something that's really important when going international. You really need to understand who you're selling to, who's going to be purchasing from you. Then we'll take a look at the global e-commerce landscape in general. Then we'll look at international e-commerce choices for exporters. We'll go into some case studies of companies that are doing it best, and then action points, helpful resources, takeaways, and Q&A. And that's when Monica will be talking about the STEP grant and how you guys can apply. So with that, I'll hand over to Stephanie to begin.
Great. Thank you so much, Samantha, and good morning, everyone. We're so glad you joined us for this webinar today. So our mission at VEDP International Trade is to help Virginia companies succeed in the international marketplace by connecting you with buyers and customers in countries around the world. And normally, much of our work centers around putting you directly in front of those customers in face-to-face meetings where you can present your products and services in person. But right now, in the throes of this pandemic, we know you need new ways to connect with buyers and customers, particularly those overseas who you can't travel to see in person. And today's methods of connecting have shifted more and more to a digital focus, not only online marketing, but online selling, e-commerce. Now, this isn't new, we know that, but the need for a strong and engaging online presence has dramatically intensified in the last 9 months. And that brings us to the topic of today's webinar. For more and more companies, e-commerce is the name of the game right now, and not only for B2C companies, but increasingly for B2B companies as well. And that means you need to make sure you are ready to sell online and that buying from you online is easy and efficient for your customers. Now, IBT Online is a longtime partner of ours, and they're with us today to talk about how you can connect with customers via your e-commerce platforms and best practices in online selling. We're also going to tell you about the Virginia Online Global Program, which we partner with IBT on to make the internet literally work for you around the world. And the best part is at the end of the webinar, Monica, is also going to tell you about how your company can access this program and most importantly, get funding to help pay for it and the great work that IBT Online does. So thanks again for joining us. Thanks to IBT for putting the webinar together and for your ongoing partnership. Samantha, I'll turn it back over to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So before I actually get into the international buyer persona and their localized journey, I forgot to mention that we will have polls throughout the webinar. So when a poll comes up, if you could grab your mouse and answer, that would be super helpful so we can understand where you're at and how we can help you further. And at the very end of the webinar, we'll also have a quick, just like 1 to 2 minute survey, and we really appreciate those responses as well. So with that, first is defining your buyer persona and your ideal corporate profile. So before we dive into the nuts and bolts of why e-commerce and how to do it internationally, we think it's absolutely vital that you start with defining your ideal corporate profile and the buyer persona within it. So the first step is the profile. Your ideal corporate profile is your ideal client or user. So you need to define it as either like a big corporation, a small mom and pop company, an OEM, a direct to consumer, all those attributes that define your ideal corporate customer. But a buyer persona is not the same thing. You need to go deeper into categories within your ideal corporate profile. So for example, let's say for a company that's B2B and advanced manufacturing, that's your ideal corporate profile. One of your buyer personas would be the CEO that makes the ultimate decision. But that decision is based on talks with his engineer, maybe head of sales and marketing, and the research analyst, each with its own set of challenges and pain points. So your buyer persona will define the people within those companies that you need to work with and connect with to engage about what their challenges are and how your business can solve those issues. So each buyer persona will have specific questions, concerns, and roles within that ideal corporate profile. But you have to remember that your buyer persona changes over time, and your international buyer personas may not be the same as your domestic, and we'll get into that in a second. But first, to define a buyer persona and give you guys an example of it. So a buyer persona is a semi-fictional representation of your ideal customer based on market research and real data about your existing customers. So the point about defining your buyer persona is that it allows you to reach out to the right person at the right time with the right message, saving you a ton of time and resources. And this is especially important when we're talking about e-commerce because mistakes can be pretty expensive when you're going global. And so it's really important to get the baseline correct. So if you try to accelerate your sales process without knowing exactly who you're selling to, you might be accelerating into a dead end, which is not good for anybody. So an example of a buyer persona is ZipCar. And we use this example because they have such a clear idea as to who their buyer persona is that they inserted it into their mission statement. So they're looking for somebody who's urban, educated, tech savvy, and environmentally conscious. And you can tell that their communication policy surrounding it absolutely speaks to that. So if you look at this Instagram post, you see two young urban people that look environmentally conscious because they're holding plants and they're in an urban environment. And ZipCar actually goes a step further by using the appropriate hashtags like hashtag back to school, hashtag plants, and hashtag dorm life. But identifying your domestic buyer persona is just one part of really understanding who you're trying to reach out to. You need to understand your international buyer persona as well. So especially in the times that we're in today, your international buyer personas can differ from your domestic buyer persona. So on this slide, there are a few questions that you should ask yourself, like, are there multiple buyer personas for my export markets? How do they find me? What do they care about? Are their concerns different from my domestic buyer persona? How do they want to purchase from me if it's an e-commerce platform? And L'Oreal frequently cited for how spot on they are with their international marketing. So if you look at this example, this was towards the beginning of the pandemic, and this was L'Oreal telling their US customers, their US stylists, their US hair salons that they are with them, even though people were socially distancing, things were closing down. business was not going on as usual, L'Oreal was talking to their buyer persona and saying, hey, we're here, we're with you. Sorry, I'm gonna go on mute real quick. Sorry about that. There's evil gardeners that are trying to take over the house, apparently. So if you look at Australia, the message is totally different. There's no mention of COVID-19, but instead a focus on the climate. And this is probably because of the horrible fires that happened earlier this year. And they were speaking to those concerns in their Australian buyer persona. And then in the last example, we have L'Oreal Brazil, that's demonstrating to Brazilian customers that they are doing their part to help the people of Brazil by producing hand sanitizer, which is something that they don't normally produce. So as you can see, each buyer persona is clearly different and the messaging is respectful of that. So taking a look at the buyer persona's priorities today. So these are the priorities that we hear from the companies that we're talking to, and also their specific buyer personas. So in this current environment, people are looking after their employees, they're managing costs, they're maintaining supply chains and existing partnerships. And what we're trying to focus on today is generating sales, exports, and business in your international markets.
Thanks, Samantha. I'm going to take it over from now and maybe give you a chance to get your dog under control. The joys of working from home. We just wanted to sort of big picture stuff now, just about sort of who's online, who's doing e-commerce globally, and what does that mean? For those of you who've been on other of our webinars, this one will be familiar, but it's worth remembering. The world population is about 7.5 billion. 4.6 billion of us are online, and the average 60% of the global population, and the average time that people spend online, that 4.6 billion are spending 7 hours a day online. So a third of their day, a third of their 24 hours online. So that's you know, it really is global, and it is a great way to connect, and a fast, efficient way of connecting with people everywhere in the world. And connecting is also using communication, using social media. So I said 4.66 billion people are online, 4.14 billion of them are using social media. You know, and a lot of that is through mobile phone and different types of apps and different types of platforms. So your buyer persona will change according to those different markets, change their platforms and change their social media buy. But in each case, you can connect with them using the internet, using websites, and using social media. And that's, I think, the key message really about e-commerce. And when we look at sort of strategies for e-commerce, international e-commerce, I think it's important to remember that, like Samantha's example there with L'Oreal, it's almost like having different satellites around. You know, your US e-commerce website is not really going to attract a lot of, and not really going to work for you outside the US. You're going to get some lucky dip, some lucky ones every now and then, but the majority, 90%, are going to be from the US. So if you know that your business should do well in France or in Brazil, for example, then those markets merit their own localized website and own e-commerce environment with their own marketing around it to generate the sales. So that's sort of what we wanted to present on this slide, and how that fits in with either an Amazon or an e-commerce platform or the social media channels you choose, you know, can all be worked out. But the two key tools you have are your international websites and your social media strategies. So given Samantha's dog, we wanted to give you an example of what it looks like for different people in different parts of the world. So actually, I have a dog that barks a lot too in webinars. So Samantha and I thought we'd look at squeakless dog toys. Samantha, sitting in the US, went to google.com and searched squeakless dog toys. And she got lots of things that she's familiar with: chewy.com, amazon.com, a little blog from Yahoo, things like that. I'm sitting in the UK, so I go to google.co.uk. Right? Same Google, different place, so different Google in that sense. Google.co.uk. I put the same words in, Squeakle's dog toys, to help my webinars, and I get different search results. I get barksandbunnies.co.uk. I get Amazon, but I got amazon.co.uk. And I get lots of other ones that Samantha's never heard of, because Google knows where I am and what is relevant for me. That's why your e-commerce website, if you have one based in Virginia, may not be reaching your international audience, or may not have the attributes that Google thinks is relevant for your international audience. So I guess while we're looking at this, why we think that you need localized e-commerce, localized business tools, online business tools, it's basically because that's the way that you're going to be able to reach out and connect and engage. And actually, the e-commerce is also a lot about building trust of your buyer's journey. And to build that trust, you need to have a localized website, because it's very, very hard to engage in a website, perhaps in a foreign language, different metrics, different currencies. You're very worried about it. But if it's in your home territory, you're like, oh, okay, fine. I have a lot more trust about that. Let's talk now about global e-commerce landscape. Maybe Samantha, if you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, let's do it. Excellent. So first things first, when you take a look at this, you really gain a sense for how big e-commerce is. $3.5 trillion globally, and at a world population of about 7.5 billion, 4.5 billion are online and 3.4 billion are shopping online, meaning 45% of the world's population is buying online, and it's only increasing. And we see this because, for example, Amazon stock has increased by more than 60% this year. This is supported by the increase in consumer spending on Amazon as well. So between May and July, it was up 60% from the same time last year. Not only that, but another platform that we'll review later, which is Shopify, shared their gross merchandise volume, which is the measure of customers' total spending through Shopify's network of stores, which rose 119% year on year in the second quarter to $30.1 billion. And it's absolutely a global phenomenon, as you can see here. So based on the last slide, we already know that China and the United States are huge e-commerce markets, worth at about 740 billion and 560 billion respectively. But you have to keep in mind that Europe is also quite large. And if you take the region as a whole, it's about the same size of the US. But here's a snapshot of e-commerce adoption worldwide, with an average of 74% of internet users saying that they bought something online within the past month, and this was in October 2020. What I find interesting is in this graph, there are countries that have a greater penetration of e-commerce than the United States, who weren't in the top 10 of B2C global e-commerce numbers that we saw on the previous slide, like Indonesia, Thailand, the Philippines, Poland, and Ireland. E-commerce is being adopted worldwide and not just in the main markets, and it's projected to grow even more. But taking a quick look at the different type of e-commerce activities and habits online, you'll see that 82% of internet browsers have gone and searched online for something to buy, which is why SEO is absolutely critical, not only in the US, but also in your international markets. 52% of them have made a purchase via a mobile device, which is why having an e-commerce site or a localized site that is mobile friendly is also so important. And something that's not included in this slide is that we think is really important for this conversation is that 57% of customers have purchased goods from another country. So they're comfortable purchasing from another website. And this is why a local user experience on your site and your storefront needs to be a priority, regardless of what platform you're using. And not only that, but you also need a social media strategy surrounding it. And we included this slide because we understand that a lot of you guys are B2B businesses, and you need to know that as a B2B business, you can't just kind of push social media to the side. As you can see by this graph, people are using social media channels as a source for B2B research. So they're using YouTube, Facebook, WhatsApp, all to research purchases before actually going through with it. And the reason why we always suggest doing a social media strategy is threefold. So first is to expand your other marketing efforts. So your content has the chance to be seen by a wide audience, and you can actually make it the right audience with the proper tools. It also allows you to build brand awareness. So gone are the days when you could only, do some sort of advertising through billboards or magazines or television ads. With social media, you have the ability to bring your brand content directly to your customers, your partners, and your prospects. And now you'll actually know who your audience really is. And social media is actually one of the most powerful ways to connect with your audiences. Sprout Social reports that when customers follow a brand on social, 67% of customers are more likely to spend more with that brand, and 78% say that they will visit the brand's physical retail store. Social media helps you attract buyers to your products and your services, and it allows you to have the ability to directly have conversations with those people, with those individuals, at the time and the place that they want, the best way that they want to communicate with you. And one more note about the global e-commerce landscape that sometimes is forgotten is that e-commerce is for B2B businesses as well. Many people think of e-commerce as just selling to individuals sitting in their house, which I guess now for B2B would be the same. And they're surprised as to the prevalence of e-commerce for B2B transactions. It's kind of challenging to get consistent data, but by all measurements, it is absolutely huge. Statista estimated that global B2B e-commerce is valued at around 10.6 trillion in 2019. That's about 3.5 times the size of the B2C market. But remember, whether it's B2B or B2C, we're still communicating with and engaging with a person on the other side. And what this means is that even if your B2B product or service is a really high price point and really customized, and you take a consultative approach, your website has to be compelling enough and has to have enough information to encourage that call to action to convince the customer to request a contract or request a quote from a salesperson, because he or she has already done their research online. And whether you're selling a product or a service through B2B or B2C, the influence of smart website development and strategic online marketing is absolutely critical. And you can see here by this chart that the primary channels for research, the first one is search engines. So people searching on a search engine for a product or a service and then doing the research. Then the one right below that is social networks, and that actually beats out things like customer reviews, which is also vital, but obviously people are getting their information from social media and SEO first. So with all of that information in hand, I'm going to hand it over to Susanna to talk about the international e-commerce options for exporters to take advantage of this global landscape.
Thanks, Samantha. So we're going to sort of talk very about the main options that you have. And as a Virginia company, if you're looking to go online and sell e-commerce, what are the options you have, basically? And we'd like to sort of, I try and sort of basically say, you could in summary this, you could have your own localized website plus a link to a marketplace or in-market distributors, and that they sell online for you. So a marketplace could be like an Amazon or whatever, or your in-market distributor. That could be selling online. You could have totally do-it-yourself, everything do-it-yourself. So your own e-commerce platform for your domestic market, and then replicate that everywhere internationally. That's ambitious, but gives you total control. Or else you can have a combination of those, where you have a combination of a marketplace and your own. And I'll talk a little bit about how those three big ways work. First, I mean, when we talk about generalist marketplaces, those are companies that you know all very well. Those are Amazon, obviously, and eBay and Alibaba. and things. But there's some big regional players as well. Mercado Libre, for example. Now if you were to go through this and say, who's number 2 in each of these markets, you'd find very different ones. Number 1 in Europe, for example, is Amazon. Number 2 in Europe is Zalando, or Cdiscount, depends where you are in Europe. Mercado Libre in Latin America is really vital and really huge. So worth looking at that. So these are the big market, the big generalist marketplaces. Then you have sort of more specialist marketplaces, and these can be either specialist platforms for industries, and here I've taken the example of PartSpace, which is a platform for the aeronautics and aviation business. So if you're looking for a spare part for your jet, go on that, and you'll have it. Or else you'll have more generalist in-market distributors. And here we have an example of, I think, of Elf International, which is a retailer, a specialist retailer in electrical products. And there you can see it's broader than that very narrow specialist marketplace, but an in-market distributor. There's an awful lot of these marketplaces around there, and I've given you some of the big ones. Some of the big ones that we saw, the generalist ones like the Amazons and so on. But if we look, there's some regional ones as well that I mentioned. And the regional ones, obviously, Amazon number 1, but you're quickly getting into, other ones, like Rakuten, Poshmark, AliExpress. And then if you go down a little bit in terms of South America, in fact, it says Mercado Libre, and Amazon is actually getting lower down. Regional ones in Europe, again, some of them, I don't know if you know all these companies, but there's an awful lot of these marketplaces to take advantage of. So don't only think of the big Amazons or the big regional ones like that. They're by Southeast Asia, and then China, which has very much its own environment. And if you're interested in the Chinese market, that would have to be very much a Chinese platform. Taobao, JD.com, Shopee, or other ones like that. If we're looking at your own e-commerce platform, there's a lot of choice as well. Everything from Magento, Weebly, PrestaShop, and obviously Shopify. There's a couple of non-negotiables that I put on this slide. Really important to make sure that you have, absolutely important that it's mobile responsive design, simple user interface, automation, conversion-oriented user experience, and all those things are absolutely important that you know from the very start on this. So those are some of the big ones, the global e-commerce platforms. And again, a lot of these are ones that you probably know. If you are going to go this route, I would really recommend that you have a very close look and make sure that that they're all good internationally. Some of them are better internationally than others. So when we talk about your own platform, get my mouse to work here. I guess there's 4 that I would really highlight. Shopify, Shopify Plus, BigCommerce, and Magento. WooCommerce is one that we do a lot of work on as well, because for companies that say, I want an e-commerce platform, but I don't want the full payment gateway. So it's an e-commerce environment, but it ends with request a quote. So you're not actually having the payment gateway in those other countries. Let's say you want to have a German website for your German prospects, and you want them, and it looks like an e-commerce, and they can choose the product, they get all the detail, they have that, and then they say, okay, that's what I want in my basket. Now, how do I request a quote? Then WooCommerce as a great plugin for that. You can have also, as I said, a combination of all of those. If you say, okay, I want to have, I'm happy with an Amazon, or I'm happy with my in-market distributor, you can still have a localized website in that market, which will allow you then to gain the visibility on your end clients. And we'll show you an example of how to do that later. But basically, that means having a localized website and using the platforms like PartSpace or an Amazon as a logistics supplier. So that you have visibility on your end client, you are in charge of your own marketing, and you are in control in a way of your brand. It also helps mitigate the disadvantage of being face-to-face or next to your major competitor, which often happens on these platforms like an Amazon or a specialist marketplace. So having a localized website, even if it's a small one, will give you the long-term growth awareness, growth in your brand that you need. So in summary, if we're just sort of summarizing it, without a localized website, it's hard sometimes because then you're going to have limited brand development. In the sense, you're paying money, to be on Amazon or to be on a parts base. They are growing their brand. What about your brand? Beware as well, there are a lot of ongoing commissions and fees, a lot of other costs involved in marketing and QR codes and all kinds of things like that, which add up very quickly when you're looking at these big platforms. With a localized website, you can then mitigate some of those effects, as I said, control your brand and differentiate your product. That's really important to maintain price competitiveness in these markets. I'm going to launch a very quick poll now, just to make sure that you're all there, and because we really want to find out as well. Oops, wrong one, hold on. I want to ask you all if you are already active in e-commerce. Are you already, busy in e-commerce internationally, domestically? Are you still thinking about it? Is this something that you're thinking about a lot and want to do now? Or are you looking at, you've got domestic and you want to go international? Let us know. And it's actually really interesting. I'd say it's very evenly split between all three. There are some of you who are already very active domestically and internationally, and we round of applause. Some of you are still very much thinking about it, and some are just domestic, but be evenly split amongst all of you. I'm going to close that poll now. Thank you very much for responding to that. And then let's talk a little bit, Samantha, perhaps you could talk a little bit about the e-commerce best practices and the Virginia Online Global programs.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. So in Virginia, we have a Virginia Online Global program where, depending on what your goals are as a B2B, B2C, or B2G company, we can tip and tailor your online presence accordingly. So whether that's creating a fully functioning e-commerce platform, or creating a website to help recruit distributors or support existing distributors, or maybe grow brand awareness, credibility, and trust. Depending on what your goals are, we have a program for you, and we can tip and tailor it accordingly. But before I go into the specifics of the program, I would like to hand over to Monica to talk about the step funding and step grants to help Virginia exporters succeed.
Hi, well, thank you. I appreciate that very much. So Virginia is pleased to offer the STEP grant, which is funded in part through a cooperative agreement with the U.S. Small Business Administration. Currently, this grant reimburses up to $6,000 in international marketing media expenses for qualified Virginia small businesses. This grant will reimburse 100% for expenses such as website globalization, branding, advertising, social media platforms, brochures, and print media for international magazines and newspapers. So there are limited slots available, and the application process is competitive. So please let us know if you have further questions or interests.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Monica. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Excellent. So to get into those programs that you can use these STEP grants for, first we have options A and B for the website creation, the website localization process. So option A is a 2-market expansion, where we will deliver 2 localized websites for your top 2 target markets, and based off of your US website, but within a limited scope. So each website will have 12 web pages and 2,000 words each. And you can choose any 2 markets that will be beneficial for your international goals. Option B is just anything above and beyond the scope of work of option A. So maybe you want a website redesign, or maybe you want new content for your international websites. that would all be covered under option B. The price of option B is totally dependent on the scope of work and the functionality of the website. So if you have a portal or something like that, and there are step grants available to use towards both options A and B. And a really good example of a company who used option A for to-market expansion is Palladio Beauty. So Palladio is a Florida company who sells both B2C and B2B. And what they were having trouble with is keeping their brand identity across international markets. They had really great distributors, but sometimes they were representing the brand with different kinds of colors and fonts, and Palladio was not a fan of that, especially in the beauty industry. You need to have very consistent branding. So they reached out to us, and they decided to do the online global program in Mexico and Saudi Arabia, and they're actually planning to expand into other markets as well. And as you can see by the examples that Susanna's clicking through, the branding was very consistent, even though the pictures are a little bit different, and obviously the language is very different. It's localized to each specific country. You can tell that it's Palladio Beauty in every single country. So brand control, brand consistency. They wanted to help their in-market partners sell the products. And they also wanted to grow in those target markets as well. And we actually built it in a way that if they do want to create it, transform it into an e-commerce platform, they would be able to do so pretty easily on these informational sites. But to go along with these localized websites, we always suggest that you, especially for e-commerce, to do some sort of social media marketing in the background, because you have to be able to communicate with your local e-commerce buyer persona. So what I really want to highlight here is the importance of this. We've highlighted some quotes on the slide about social media and e-commerce. For example, 40% of Middle East consumers use social media to buy products, or how intertwined social media is in the everyday lives of customers and businesses across Latin America. This is a trend that is seeing some strong across the globe as consumers and businesses turn to online solutions for their sales. So e-commerce everywhere is a very competitive place, not just for B2C, but also for B2B companies. And engaging with your buyer persona is sort of a differentiating factor for success on these online platforms. So not to worry, we know that international online marketing, both SEO and social media marketing, can be a little bit overwhelming. So we have option C available. Oh, but first the poll.
May I launch a poll first? Yeah. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. I just wanted to launch a quick poll and ask, before we talk about the other options, if anyone is interested in localized websites and the Virginia Online Global Program. That's the option A and option B that we just discussed and that Samantha showed you. And if you have an interest in that, let us know, and let us know if you want us to reach out to you or send you any information on that by email, or we can send us some URLs to look at or have a chat with. So if you have an interest in that, please let us know. We're delighted to see that so many of you are interested in that. Thank you very much. That's great. We will circle back to you in due course. So I'm going to close that poll now. Thank you very much for that. And back to Samantha to talk about online marketing, option C, and also option E, e-commerce.
Excellent. Thanks, Susanna. So yes, option C has to do with international online marketing. So once you create these localized websites for your top target markets, we always suggest, as you saw in the previous slides, to surround it by some sort of communication policy. So monthly, ongoing search engine optimization or search engine marketing and social media marketing to help drive traffic to those websites and help you achieve those results and get your ROI. So we always suggest that you do that, whether you do it in-house or with a company like ours. We have an online marketing program where we would be kind of like your in-house, out-house marketing partner, where we would do monthly ongoing search engine marketing, social media marketing, and reporting and analytics for your top markets to help drive that traffic to your websites. And then we have option E for e-commerce. So you learned a lot about e-commerce in today's webinar, all about different platforms and ways that you can connect your websites, and a lot of really useful information. So if you want to follow through with an e-commerce platform, we would be happy to build it for you for your top market. So in this example, and a case study that I'll cover later, we built one for vapor pens in Brazil. So fully functioning e-commerce platform with a cart, and it's in Brazilian Portuguese with SEO for Brazil. We would be happy to build that for you. So for the first example, who is Farkla, who used our option C in order to help drive traffic to their websites. We did online global in China and the UK, and they also plan on expanding. We created localized marketing campaigns through social media and search engine optimization for their China market. China is a pretty unique environment in itself. So they reached out to us to help them best optimize their chances in succeeding in the China market through their online presence. Through option C, we've increased their sales, their brand recognition, we've helped generate leads for distributors, and they've gotten business growth in that main target market as well as the UK. And we actually have a case study on our website if you want to hear it directly from Farkla. And then in the next example, we have Vapor Pens, and Vapor Pens is the example of the e-commerce platform that we created for them for the Brazilian market. And Vapor Pen was actually pretty unique in that they were already creating an e-commerce platform in Brazil, but the provider that they were using was not specialized in international sites. So they were trying to create this Brazilian platform, and it was just not working. It was not functioning the way that it was supposed to. It was not attracting people to the Brazilian website. It didn't give that trust to the Brazilian consumer that this was a legitimate site. So they turned to us, and we were able to create a fully functioning Brazilian e-commerce website, along with Spanish-speaking Latin America and Australia and New Zealand. And we actually also supported this e-commerce platform with localized marketing campaigns through social media and SEO. So they were able to increase their sales on their marketing platform, and it also helped them gain brand recognition and business growth in those target markets. So we were really proud of Vapor Pens and to be part of that effort.
Thanks, Samantha. I'm going to launch another poll again, just to ask if you have an interest in the Virginia Online Global programs, and particularly with regards to e-commerce anywhere in the world. That if you would like us to get back to you with more information, or if you're looking for reports or anything like that, or country-specific reports about the e-commerce side, then we can help and discuss the various options. And again, thank you very, very much for that. That looks like a very enthusiastic response. We will circle back to you soon with that. So thank you. I'm going to close that poll. And just sort of wanted to give some sort of action points after all of these discussions. I'm having a lot of problems getting my mouse to work. Here we go. So the main sort of action points, takeaways were the summaries, and then please do drop any questions you have into the chat box, and we'll happy to get onto those questions. So I guess for us, sort of one of the main takeaways that we would like is basically to say that Virginia companies can really and should really leverage these online business tools. It allows you to really punch above your weight, to get found and be understood and do business everywhere, anywhere in the world that you target. You know that your clients are online, and you know that that's the way to reach them right now. And I think in the future as well, I don't think we're going back. Probably all going back to the office, I hope. But I think we're going to be continuing to use more and more online tools. And then, you know, what about e-commerce and the, you know, knowing the buyer persona, knowing that, and sort of, you know, how to attract, how to engage, how to delight your prospects, and turn strangers into prospects into customers. And I guess for us, it's you know, the basics comes into, obviously, you know, you need to really have your ducks all lined up, your logistics, your returns policies, your after sale, all of that. Of course, yes. But then from our perspective on the online side, you need to know your buyer persona, and that local buyer persona's journey is what Samantha was telling you about earlier. Then choose the right e-commerce model for you, the one that sits best with your business, that fits best also for where your buyer's persona is. And then use those localized websites and localized online marketing to be found and build the trust you need for the buyer's journey. To end up in good sales. I guess finally, you know, if Virginia has some major assets and resources available to you, you know, Stephanie and Monica and their team at the VEDP are fantastic and tireless, and are always there for you, as we are here at IBT Online as well. So you have resources as well. Reach out. We've got a lot of resources dedicated just for Virginia on our website, and then obviously you have exportvirginia.org and the VEDP team, Stephanie. And so with that, I'm going to hopefully get some questions in from you, and I see that there are a few. Samantha, I'm going to start with one for you, if that's okay. There's a few more coming in now. I'm going to start with you, if that's okay, Samantha. What is the best software platform to use internationally? I think they mean, you know, with it, Shopify or whatever.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're pretty platform agnostic when it comes to e-commerce, but depending on what your in-house capabilities are, what your goals are, and what countries you're going into, we would be able to make a suggestion as to which one would fit those goals best.
Okay. Can also for Samantha, can we integrate our CRM with an e-commerce platform?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We would be happy to do that, and it's absolutely vital that you do that. We encourage it.
And another question, just for you, a quick question as well. How long does it take to build an e-commerce platform?
Yeah, so for our e-commerce platforms, it usually takes about 3 to 4 months. Definitely depends on the scope of work, so the amount of SKUs, pages, words that you want on your e-commerce platform, but we can usually say 4 months is a pretty safe bet.
Okay. And I guess this one really is also more for Stephanie or Monica. I think perhaps Stephanie. So Stephanie, the VEDP team, how long does the process take to get the grant and the application form?
Monica, if you wouldn't mind, I think you'd be in the best position to answer that. It's not long. We try to make it as simple as possible.
By the time you apply, place your application, we normally have an answer within 1 week. So I feel like it's pretty quick, especially under you know, typical standard time when people take a long time to respond. Our agency is very quick on responding and getting an answer for you ASAP, and that shouldn't hold you up from speaking to IBT Online while we're working on your application process.
And another question perhaps for you, Monica, is just, does that STEP grant conflict with other grants that are available?
That's a great question, and no, it does not. So that's also a very exciting part, is it can often be coupled with other financial resources that we can offer through other international trade programs. So it does not conflict. I would say that anyone interested should reach out to fully understand the requirements, the eligibility requirements for the grant. They are not that restrictive, which is surprising for a federal grant, and I think everyone would be very encouraged and want to fill out the application ASAP.
Okay, and there's a sort of question that's just actually come in as you were speaking. Where is the application available?
They can reach out to me directly. We will put them in touch with their international trade or program manager as well, and coupled together, we will work on that application process with the client or with the company. But for today's online presentation, it'd probably be easiest if they reached out to me directly. My email I see is here shown, so if someone could just email me, I'll make sure they get the information.
Thank you very much, Monica. Just one question, I think, which is a little bit technical. It's about multiple currencies on e-commerce sites, and how to deal with multiple currencies on the e-commerce website. This is something that we have to deal with a lot. And obviously there's always currency risks and currency worries, but a lot of the softwares now have very good plugins, which allow you to be quite flexible and to have real-time currency valuations on your e-commerce platforms, so that in fact you're up to date at all times with the currencies, which is a relief. So yes, there are now very good and tried and tested plugins that do work very well. There's one last question which I'll answer, which is just another technical one, which has to do with about security. All websites that we build are fully encrypted. They're HTTPS only, and we do continuous updates as well. And it's really important to do the updates to safeguard the websites. Shopify, for example, is a great platform, love it, but it does have a tendency to be easily hacked if you're not updating it. And the updates of the plugins have to be really, really closely watched. So that's an important one, especially if you're going international. So, and if you have more technical questions, I can also refer you to our tech team. That's about, well, it gets very complex after that. I wanted to thank Monica for joining us today, and Stephanie and the VEDP team all together for their support and their really tireless efforts that they make for all the Virginia companies, and that we're so pleased and delighted to be able to work with the VEDP and with the Virginia companies. And then thank my colleague Samantha and her dog for a great presentation. Thank you very much, Samantha. Most of all, I want to thank all of the Virginia companies who attended today. Thank you all so much. Great. And reach out to us if we can be of any help. And if you have asked that you will reach out, we will circle back to you and get any questions and answer any questions that you have. Thank you all very much. Stay safe, stay well, keep trading, and we hope to see you. We hope to see you in person soon. We hope that this is ending soon. So with that, thank you all very much. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you. Bye-bye.